All right. We are here with Dr. Jack Tips. I'm just over the moon delighted that he said yes and he's here with us today. So thank you and welcome virtually from Texas.
Well, thank you so much. It's hot and dry here, but it's always a pleasure when we get to talk or, share ideas or even the lure of being able to say something that might impact someone favorably and be a help on their journey. It's just always a special time. So it's really a thanks to you for having me on. And we just take this little time on this lovely Friday uh, to visit a little bit and look for the inspiration that helps us through all the turmoil and changes that are going on with health and with life. So, yeah, definitely welcome.
Wonderful. And that's, just your introduction alone just shows exactly what I've been telling people. I've done a couple videos and lives before we came on this past week, just trying to prep people to um, what we're going to do today and who we're talking to exactly. And that introduction is perfect. Just the beautiful, like, reverence and humbleness, and just the willingness and interest in the conversation and the complexity and also the simplicity of connecting into your body, into health questions, listening, and kind of all that. So thank you.
Well, still young in my 73rd year. We always hope when we become older that we have learned something along the road and can share some insights. And we've been able to, by trial and error, look at maybe insights or opinions that don't work, and we get buffeted about, by life and so forth. And then we come into greater wisdom. So that's the I think the joy of what we can do if I can tap into some things of good meaning that will serve us. So
Yeah.
all set to go.
That really, like, kind of, I think that helps bring into my first question, which is, I am so curious, what's made you? Because you really seem to have this scientific mind with, all of this, the research and the work that you've done, and then you have this heart of, of just the way some of your books, you really describe the innate wisdom of nature, and the grander energy of love. And so I'm curious if you want to either start from now back or from the beginning up to now, to let us know kind of how you're so rounded in the way you are.
Well, we could start with the Big Bang theory and move through the string theory and
Yeah.
work the
Well,
wheel of life and all. But I think my quest for the natural health just came out of the simple need that I was the sickly child. I was the kid with the doctor's exemption from physical education at school, and um, constantly. My weekends were driving to see another doctor, 300 miles away that might have hope of helping and that type of thing. And after, I don't know, 15 years of that not working, something within me decided to take matters into my own hands. So I started being the nerd kid that hung out at the health food store with the old ladies that were selling yogurt and, had their opinions. And I started reading and learned all the vitamins and then learned all the minerals. And then I really started an in depth study of herbs and eventually herbs of course segued to homeopathy because the homeopathic remedies are often made from the more drastic herbs and then when I was probably about 25 I loaded up my resources and tracked down a medical doctor who was a classical homeopath and through his practice I received a remedy and experienced a healing. And so that obviously was wow, this is the thing that worked. And in my difficult case, this is the thing that worked for me. And so that, I think, was the moment of not only how do I have a happy, healthy elder years, which we all move into over time, but how can I help others? How can I pay it forward? And so that established me someday after herbology school into homeopathic school. And I went to the homeopathic university and opened up a practice that the only intent of the practice was, and I'll come back to the only intent. I mean, obviously, a person has to make a living and we have to eat and have shelter and so forth. But the intent of the clinic was how do we help a person's body heal itself? And that's something that's so direly lacking in the entire medical model, that they don't have things that help heal that much. Now, I know someone's going to go, but wait a minute, I had a broken leg and blessedly I got painkillers and they prevented infection. And yes, bless that. You had the expertise when and where you need it. A carrot juice is not going to reset a broken leg. But as far as the chronic issues, the medications being built by big pharma seem to be deliberately constructed that they don't cure, that they palliate or that they ameliorate, and then you're addicted to taking them for the rest of your life. While
Can you
other,
define that? Palliate and ameliorate?
oh sure, yeah, I'll slip into a crazy word now and then.
I
Someone's,
love it. It's so good. Just because we know about palliative care and we've heard allopathic medicine, I'm assuming they have
hey,
some.
that's a nice big word too. And
Thanks, I have a few.
we'll talk about one of the leading causes of diseases, which is called iatrogenic. Another great word for people to wrestle with. And I got a greeting card where someone had painted a dragonfly on it. And I said, well, that Lepidopterus. And they went, huh? Anyway, that just means four wings. But,
Love it.
and some people show off with big vocabulary, and I so try not to, but I don't want to insult people with kind of dumbing everything down to the third grade level, which we're programmed with on television and so forth. You asked what palliation is. That's just to relieve some pain and suffering, but not correct the disease. Amelioration means to more push the disease aside, have a person get better, but the underlying disease continues and will develop. While there's amelioration, it's like someone says, oh, I still have migraines, but my medication means that they're only 50% as strong. And so they go through life, but they never grab the bootstraps to get lifted up into the realm of their being where they can live without any of that phenomenon happening. And the mechanics of healing there, a lot we understand more today than we ever did. We understand the epigenetics turns on, that our bodies adapt through innate wisdom. And if we have a symptom, it's a beautiful portrait of the body struggling. And there is a struggle, and that struggle needs help. That's what symptoms are for. And then, so that person has the headache and they go, okay, that was pretty miserable. I want to palliate it. Let me take an aspirin. Or I want to ameliorate it. Let me take a Tylenol. Let me just get through to tomorrow without this ice pick in my brain. And they do. And so there's nothing wrong with that. And again, I say, let's bless the medications that palliate and ameliorate the suffering. I sometimes read old medical journals, and the idea of during the war between the states or the Civil War in this country, the hacksaws were amputating legs without anesthesia, and it's just like, what a horrible experience. And today we've got the Morpheus, we've got the medications where people feel nothing on it. And so I don't want to ever be accused of throwing the baby out with the bathwater when I'm pointing the finger a little bit, but the finger is pointed at practices that don't elicit genuine healing, within an individual. And that is a holistic approach because people's symptoms start in the energetic or the thought
Mm,
realm and will manifest down over time according to their individual genetics and their individual epigenetic expressions of health. And then they manifest a symptom. So that symptom is screaming, please, please, would you, in your wisdom as a human being, would you please see and find your way to the practice, the therapy, the healer, and activate the healer within to bring us back into metabolic balance, into energetic balance, so that we can live our lives, not just like a paramecium escaping pain, moving from pain toward pleasure, but to be able to lay aside our constant preoccupation with adapting, surviving, eating, shelter, and then be able to have the wonderful, we'd say, more spiritual experience of life. That
mm,
we're doing our diligence with these wonderful bodies to
mm.
free our energy and our minds and hearts to embrace the more refined aspects that are part of the human experience.
No, I love that. And there's like 100 segues with that, everything you said that I want to get into, and hopefully we can have more sessions and we can get into those when I reread it and write it down. But I wanted to say in regards to that. So what I heard you say is, now tell me if I'm hearing you right, that it all starts within the thoughts. Is that wait, like, so are you saying like if someone is sick, it ultimately is started from the way that they're thinking? Or
Well, yeah, this is not like so much a Mary Baker Eddy kind of thought where it's all in the head, but it's a valid point. And I think we have to realize a lot when our minds grapple with things, we're seizing things that are 80% true and 90% true and embracing that as 100% true. That we get an idea or a theory. Let's just say somebody, there's an element of chaos in life. You're walking down the sidewalk and darn, you didn't see the crack. Your foot hits it, you twist your ankle, and you're bruised. Now, you can go on and on about it being karma. You can go on about it being the universe is trying to tell me something. Well, great. Those are wonderful reflections. The fact is, you sprained your ankle. Let's treat the ankle. Let's deal with it at that level, and let's get the ankle better. So you take your remedy, arnica, or you wrap it, or some disciplines will say put ice on it. Others will say put warmth on it, drive more inflammation, and get it done. You know, but you do what you do, and you take care of your ankle, and you go on through life. So I'm saying that it's not necessarily like 100% of everything has to be
right.
some flaw in our thinking. We just have the rigors of life too, and we should honor the fact that Murphy's law is real and operative in
Yeah.
our lives. But so much it's our opinions, our minds, our thoughts. Do we really trust life? Do
Mm,
we or do we live in a fear that
mm,
we're going to catch that virus?
mhm.
And that fear is the crippler of the mind, and the mind has different thoughts, and now we're more guarded, and we don't accept love, and we don't accept human contact, and we withdraw and we hide, and we start looking at our neighbors as possible vectors of death. And and so the mind drives us, and then that type of person might find that they're grieving
Mm,
over this, they're lonely, or they
mm,
may find that they're angry and they want to fight back. And
mm.
all of these rages of emotions will impact our physical health, whether it shuts down digestion, whether it
Mm.
has cortisol from the adrenals dominate our metabolism, whether it's liver not breaking down toxins as well. And eventually, over time, and if that person happened to smoke tobacco, have
Mm,
5 martinis a night,
mm.
there's going to be other influences that finally gang up, and then there's a phenomenon. And the
Yeah.
body will lock into that epigenetically. It says, okay, this world's hostile. I have to be on edge. I'm going to lock in metabolic processes that dictate this is the best I can do with what I have to work with. This is nature's law. I'm obeying nature's law. I'm protecting life.
Mm,
And yet, if we don't break out of it, then a disease results. So the thought or the concept that the big diseases, whether it's like an arthritis or an autoimmune disease, a chronic degenerative disease, and even at times deeper concerns than, oh, I just got a little cold or flu, which is might be a more superficial adjustment going on in the body. That these are often have mental and emotional
mm.
aspects that we need to account for in our holistic model. And this is what's not accounted for when the doctor says, "Oh, your throat looks red. Let me give you an antibiotic. Oh, your knee looks red. Let me give you an antibiotic." And the dentist says, "Well, we don't want you to get a bacteria from your mouth and your heart. Let me give you an antibiotic." And then we don't realize the massive repercussions that has on our normal natural microbiome that is really at the core of our metabolic processes.
Well, that's so great, and that just segues so perfectly into, I'd love to hear your, how you would talk about the 5+5. We've talked about it quite a bit with Joanna, when
Okay.
we've done lives with her, and I've, of course, read the book, and I've told people several times about the book. So when you're saying all of these things, it's like one of the things we can do is support ourselves with this 5+5 eating that helps kind of, I mean, I'll just let you take it away. But
Well, and I want to acknowledge that there's many other excellent diet plans that serve people. The Provida plan for optimal nutrition, I wrote that 35 years ago. The interesting thing is that it's held up with the test of time. Right now, like for instance, a store that has a brick and mortar would not carry that book because the copyright date is too old. They want a 2023 diet book. And the thing is that book has held up 35 years with only, I would say, maybe two very minor adjustments being needed. And that's because we went into the the laws of nature. Is like, how can we learn all the factors that govern diet and nutrition, and how can we accommodate them with what we put on a plate of food? And so it's more occupied with teaching people how to think. Gee, what should I do to make a decision? Because we're inundated today with everybody's theory. The high protein, the high fat, the high carb, the low protein. The, oh, maybe I should do keto forever, and oh, lectins are the enemy, and all of these things that there's going to be the fluctuations of consciousness going on. But fortunately, because of the great insights of Doc Wheelwright, who taught it to me, I didn't make it up myself. Um, we laid down the foundation of what does the body really need. So, to give a living example, we have big debates all the time. Should a person be, I'll just use the word vegetarian to cover vegans and everything, just that, a non meat, uh, plant based diet. And then we have on the other extreme the doctor that wrote and published very valid insights that we should not eat any vegetables, that we should eat all meat. And you have different permutations in between. And so, wouldn't it be more important for us to have some series of insights that would guide our thinking so we could decide for ourselves, should we embrace rigorously a certain dietary pattern for the promise that it's the magic answer to our health? So the 5+5 uh, came from that, and it adheres to a simple um, wrapping up summary of many of the rules. Rule number one would be that it's not you are what you eat, it's
Mhm.
what your gut microbiome bacteria eat
Mhm.
that sets the standard of your health. We are interested nowadays, and we only know this through the latest science, that we are interested in what's called postbiotic, the molecules the bacteria make that give our body the molecular structures that regulate our cellular metabolism. They make those, they excrete those. Most people have heard that certain bacterial species will make vitamin B12. In fact, that's the basis of vegetarianism, that if you have a good gut plant fed microbiome, it will make your B12. You don't have to go around and buy into the other camp's admonishment you're going to be B12 deficient. So nature has ways of adapting there, but we know we need good fats, 2 tablespoons a day. Where do we get those? We can't get those from the oils in the store.
Mm.
And we're not going to get it from the fast food industry, but we still have a responsibility to
Mm.
get that. And where do we get the molecules that nurture the cell membranes
Mm.
where life happens? Where do we get the proteins, of which our body is like 90% protein on the dense matter? Where do we get the right amino acids? Where do we get the right carbohydrates that feed pretty more instantly the mitochondrial Krebs cycle um, and the beta oxidations to make ATP the energy of our life? So the Provida came along, 5+5, and it simply said, get on your plate 5 different vegetables, one cooked. There's reasons for that. We want to get the chromatin factors, the DNA and the RNA,
Mm.
and we got to break down that cell membrane. So you've got, and you're not going to eat raw Brussels sprouts or raw beans. So you get something cooked. One, you have 4 raw, and that's for all the living enzymes and the water, the nascent water and the nascent vitamins that haven't been damaged by heat. And you have your 5 vegetables on the plate, and then you have 5 proteins. Well, that would only be at most one of them would be back to animal source. So let's say you have a small piece of lightly steamed salmon on the plate. That's sufficient. Now you're looking for 4 other proteins. So you might have soaked seeds like some sesame seeds or sunflower seeds, and you might have even some sprouted sunflower seeds. And there's other proteins where maybe there's a small piece of like feta cheese or something that you want to slip on that salmon just to really make it look restaurant worthy, and that sort of thing. So it's 5+5, and in the course of doing that, you also have automatically picked up your fatty acids. Some are plant based, and these are different fatty acids in the vegetables than what is called seed oils. And in the seeds themselves that are part of the diet, it's not seed oils. Seed oils refers to the fracking
Mm.
of oil, which is like making either diesel fuel or jet fuel or gasoline for the car or motor oil. When they have the big tower and they have the flames on the top at the
Mm.
refineries, that's how they make your vegetable oil.
Okay, but hold on. I need to interrupt and just ask, are you saying not even well-made oils, seed oils are good oil? Like if you
They have a role, and they have your omega 7s, your omega 9s, like in olive oil. And we look at history. This is part of our thinking. People have prospered on the Mediterranean or the olives, right? And olives, that oil was fought over by humanity as much as we fight over gasoline oil
right.
today. We've had a quest for oil. But a lot of the Mediterranean wars were fought over who's going to capture the olive groves, and so. But now you see, you're taking a extra virgin, cold pressed,
Mm.
straight from nature, cloudy, in the bottle, used fresh before it oxidizes and goes rancid.
Mm.
That's a whole different category than these fracked oils that line the grocery store shelves.
Mhm.
So we have a requirement for 2 tablespoons. So now you've had some seeds, you've had vegetables, there's oil in a carrot. And so you have a few olives on the plate. And again, you're getting oil straight from the whole food, not pressed, squeezed, oxygenated, put hexane into it, extracted, bleached, and all the things that get that real clean, watery oil into the jar. So we do have to go back to nature a little bit, but that's the one, 5 plus 5. And you can say add +1. There's always a plus element to life, but that's assuring you're getting the fat content. And that's the price of gold for the body, because the body will take that molecule of fat and it's going to render more ATP energy
Mm.
from it, 8 times more than a carbohydrate. And we don't really want the conversion of protein to glucose. We just want those free amino acids to support the lymphatic pool, to support the immune system, to support the muscles, to rebuild, to keep what's called the mTOR, mechanistic target rapamycin. We want to keep that balanced so people don't develop cancer,
Mm.
and but make the muscles strong and lively. So everything like this comes from getting these whole foods. So that's what the ProVita is going to teach. Of course, most people already have that down if they're in our Health Nut Club. We're going to be going to whole foods, life on the farm, back to nature, and we're going to avoid things that are refined, processed, stabilized, extracted, concentrated. And for the most part, we have to apply some wisdom and get back our bodies to the food. And it's not that like this is morally superior. It's our bodies have evolved for the last million years to accommodate these foods. These are what we're used to.
Mm.
So the body is not accommodated to pink slime, bacteria, chemical meat substitute.
Mhm.
um, Despite the promise that it can feed the world and it can save the cow and the sheep and the pig and all the dressing of all the benefits, they end up with even genetic modified life forms going into the mix, and they
Mhm.
haven't respected the deeper wisdom of nature. So
Mm.
I can only smile that humanity seems to have rejected the Bill Gates backed uh, fake food, but we could sure dream. Don't have to toil in the fields. Don't have to slaughter animals. Robots can drive tractors and stick some kind of chemical barrel into a McDonald's, and robots will squirt it out and flop it on some things that resemble food and push it out the door to people. They're all of a sudden, it's like we're free. We don't have to grocery shop. We don't have to grow and sweat and all of these things. So there's a huge lure, and we could end starving people. I mean, it is just, it goes on and on with all the virtues, and it's just too bad that the people guiding that are, I think we have a perversion that the number one motivation has to be, how do we make money? How do we monetize this? And that
Well,
means cutting corners.
I agree. I was just listening to Dr. Zach Bush this morning, and in one of his episodes, he was talking about just about like the glyphosate and kind of how it happened. And it's like from a business model, it's a great business model, but for the body and our health, it's the worst model ever, And I think we see that over and over again. And I've worked on many farms where,
Yeah.
if you cut corners, you make more money, but
Oh,
it's
absolutely. And save labor,
yeah,
and free up the human being to have, their cyber lives. Um, who wants to sit in the garden? I brought in some organic soil into one of my gardens, and I guess it had a lot of nut grass in it. I can't get rid of it. And I just keep thinking, oh man, if I could just slather this soil in glyphosate, kill all this, and then I would have soil to grow my organic vegetables. And it's like I'm out there now 6 hours in the Texas sun,
Mm,
sitting, uh, digging because of the little nuts on this grass are 12, 14 inches deep.
mm.
And they break, and there's one on another and another, and they go deep, and they're great survivors.
Yeah.
But you can see where while I might meditate on my activity in the garden, um, the good old boy or good old gal farmer
Yeah.
um, does not want to do that. But when we understand glyphosate's damage to the soil microbiome,
And then
we
our microbiomes, right?
yeah, we can't do it. Well, the glyphosate turns up in the body, and that was the promise that Monsanto Bayer gave humanity, that we would not get the pesticide, that they could spray it, kill the weeds, and the insect or the herbicide repellent would be grown by the plant. See, so now it's a genetically modified plant. It's producing a poison that keeps the grasshopper off of it, or a poison that it is able to survive, but then it incorporates. Now we eat that, and then it starts to disrupt our microbiome. And we just haven't had an understanding or respect for the bacteria's role that are in our guts,
Yeah,
that
no,
we
really.
can't modify them over and over. Every modification pushes us toward inflammation.
Mm,
That's the leading mechanism of all the autoimmune and chronic degenerative diseases.
right. So, what do you like what is the latest research that you have been doing that has been really exciting you um, with just the newer discoveries that are happening and yeah, where's your focus these days?
Oh boy, I'm going to say right now at the top of my head, there's three areas that I'm interested in: the microbiome, whether it's the skin or the oral or the gut or whatever, the gut brain connection, the gut immune connection, the gut thyroid connection, the gut skin connection. That's all enough for any brain to occupy themselves. But there's also what we could call the impact of those species upon our genes and our epigenetics. Some years ago, I caught some research that said, and they were looking to the female of the species, but they said if there's a certain type of yeast vaginally, and there's a certain type of streptococcus on the skin, and there's this other pathogen in the gut, that when the body reads the gestalt of these three threats, it has a tendency to more than average numerical statistic to go into psoriasis. So they were finding a microbial basis, but not, you can't go to the psoriasis patch and scrape it off, put it in a microscope, find what kills it, and then kill it on the body. That's the medical model. But they found that the influence of these three species could push somebody into a higher degree of psoriasis.
Mm,
That's not the only answer, the only causes of psoriasis, but they found that link. And so these microbes impact our genes. So genetic information, the microbiome, and I think you and I've had an earlier chat about the mighty mitochondria, and some of these organelles in the cells have really captured people's imagination, and they're all so important. Um, those are the areas that we can keep discovering new laws of nature
mm,
and apply them properly to the health and healing, of the body through those mechanisms.
absolutely. Wow. Well, I have two more questions, and then for this session, and then we can hopefully find more time to do some more. I would love that if it was possible. I wanted to just touch base about like, okay, as far as the biotics and the biomes, there's pre, pro, post, and then I just learned about psycho, if I'm saying it right, psychobiotics. Just learned about that 2 days ago. And so I was just curious if you could just illuminate us a bit about the the pre, pro, post, and then the psycho is so interesting.
Oh, I'd love to. I love this area. So
Okay, and especially I think because, as you know, so many people are in the mindset that probiotics are good. They buy them, religiously, and like, what is a pre and how does it move around? So there's so much about it, but let's just start at the beginning level.
sure.
Yes, to introduce it.
The prebiotic is the food source for the probiotics. So it's the food that um, Lactobacillus brevii might want to eat. And the reason the food is so important is if these species that by nature, these lactobacts are transient. They You eat them and they pass out. But what they're supposed to do along the journey in our bodies is germinate and reproduce
Mm,
and make the postbiotic, make our vitamin B12 and vitamin K, and they're supposed to synthesize immune compounds from vitamin D3, and they do all these good things, and they're supposed to kill a few bad guys along the way, and then maintain the integrity, and they make the compounds that keep the body regular, meaning like bowel movements. Are made by the bacteria, and they provide the life energies, foods for the colon sites, and they just have all of this myriad role of doing good things. Well, when people buy the average probiotic, they're not getting prebiotic. So
mm,
lacking in prebiotic, the species are saying, we're trying to go to the promised land. We are on a worldwide search for a beautiful place to hang out, and I don't see it here. We're just on the airplane. It's not. It's a desert down there, and they stay dormant. They don't germinate, and they pass through, and they go on and look for greener pastures.
mm.
And so, taking a probiotic without taking prebiotic, oftentimes the person is just in one end and out the other without much benefit. And so the prebiotics now are coming finally to the surface of like, this is super important. You really shouldn't take a probiotic without a prebiotic. Now, some people might say, well, I have a diet that's like the Provita. Say, okay, you already have the prebiotics built in because of the vegetables. Maybe you can save your $40 and not buy inulin and acacia and various fibers and things. But the prebiotics are fibers, and they feed the probiotic species, and each probiotic species might have a preference.
Mhm,
Some want to eat fat, and some want to eat more of the proteins,
mhm,
and most want to eat the carbohydrate.
mhm.
And so you'll see in prebiotic formulas on the market, they'll have um, indigestible fibers from
Oh,
like
yeah.
inulin and chicories
Mm,
and things like that. And while they're indigestible to the human being because of our enzyme system, they're exactly what the little bugs want.
mm,
And that's their diet. So here comes the probiotic, and it's got the prebiotic, so it germinates and it will start to create the lactic acid that creates the proper pH. It communicates with the psychobiome, passing molecular information to the brain um, through the enteric to the vagus nerve system, and or messenger molecules that are absorbed into the blood, and
mm,
they travel through the blood-brain barrier and tell the brain all is good in the tummy. And then the brain regulates some of the immune system,
mm,
and on it goes toward good balance. So
mm.
prebiotic and probiotic, and we mentioned earlier the postbiotic means you have to first have your prebiotic. You're not going to get a postbiotic without the prebiotic, and you have to have the probiotic.
Right.
And then they germinate, they excrete, they make postbiotics, which are taken up, uh, through the tight junctions into the body, and they circulate and they communicate with our cellular metabolic activities. So with the proper molecules, the kidneys kidney better, the livers better, the brain thinks better, the immune system does its function better. And so the body needs these plant derived compounds. So when I read a diet book that says don't eat any plants because they have lectins and you'll do so much better on just eating meat, I go, yeah, and the body will adapt and the body will, it's going to change its microbiome. And maybe it can change for good, but we're really removing something nature has given human beings, right? As hunter gatherers, we've been eating the tubers and the roots and the pieces of bark and pieces of grass and on, for millennia. And so it starts to say, wait a minute, this is a bit radical. It might do some good in the short run. Any change will do you good, so to speak. But we want to learn, like with the Provida material, we want to learn really the care and feeding of the human being. So that's your definition there.
Yeah.
Pre, pro, post, and then your psychobiome are the specific species that release molecules for the brain. And that's your gut brain, and then the brain gut, bidirectional communication. But when someone says they're constipated, they're not having the gut brain connection. And the brain's not giving the regulation signals back. So that's why this is so important. Anxiety is not founded on a lack of Prozac or something. It's founded on the gut microbiome. And depression. Not just moodiness or sadness of grief that occurs with everyone during life, but we're talking people that are in the chronic sadness of depression. There's a problem in the gut microbiome. Right. And so psychobiome has just opened up science to literally thousands of studies now that talk about it. And I was so excited about 10 years ago in Austin, Texas, a group of physicians opened up a medical clinic to treat ADD and ADHD and learning disabilities through the gut microbiome. And they were dishing out probiotics and prebiotics. And then the Texas Medical Board shut them down. And that was like a long time ago that they were trying to capitalize on this very valid and important information from science. The other caveat, I think, right now, just to bring up in all of this, because everybody now should be running for their refrigerator to get the probiotic they bought a year ago and actually use it. And the caveat is most of these probiotics on the market have been grown in labs from species that have only grown in labs.
Right.
And
so they don't have the natural elements.
It's an incestuous process, and these species do not know what it is to run into other species. They do not know what it is to run into the activity and the suspicion of the human immune system. The secretory IgA antibodies threatening, and that might actually, our bodies might herd species to become more of ours, that to make, like raising cattle or something. We want them to make a product that nourishes our bodies. So a lot of times these species from the lab are not quite up to par, but now there's certain companies that are really reaching out for human-based. So yeah, it comes from poo, but they'll take a human-based species and grow it very nicely in the lab. They might encapsulate it with a fatty acid and get it. And that way you take a more resilient species that's tried and true, and it's sort of pre-programmed to look for 98.6 degrees, no sunshine, not too much oxygen, maybe the threat of these other molecules and the threat of and so it already knows. It goes, yeah, this is my environment. And we consider the human-based species to be better. And then I think the other really great area is the up and coming, what they call soil-based organisms that we get first the natural parallel, the soil-based organism. I'm talking the probiotic. There's a lot of bad customers out in the dirt that keep our immune systems vigilant, but there's nasty mycobacteria and that type of thing. But the good guys, they come to us on our vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
um, not the processed food. So you go to the garden and you pull a carrot, you can rinse it off. We don't want to eat the dirt necessarily, unless you have pica. And but the that those organisms are also under the skin.
Mm.
They're in the carrot. So and they're already vetted by the life form, the carrot, as being beneficial.
Mm.
So throughout history, human beings have had plenty of soil-based organisms. Think of the what we would call a country say a hayseed. Some guy out there, he picks a straw out of the grass and sticks it in his mouth, and he's going around chewing this piece of grass. Right? It's an old image,
Mm-hmm.
and but there's your soil-based organisms. You're working in the garden and you're breathing. So these things have been part of human beings, and they're really our connection with the earth.
Mm-hmm.
We are from the earth. If you go back into ancient writings, I'll have to go into the Judeo Christian religions, but it says God made human beings out of the dust of the earth, out of the dirt, out of the mud, and so there has been established over the millennium this idea that and where do our bodies go? Right, dust to dust, ashes to ashes.
Yeah.
That we go back into the earth and the microbiome. So people can watch Avatar movie today, but that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have our time to strut and fret on the stage of life, that we break free and are mobile. But
Mm.
these soil-based organisms are part. So the first thing science did was challenge that idea and say, oh no, these are dangerous. We don't want soil-based organisms. We want to microwave that food, and we want to kill all the bugs before it gets to market, and you know that sort of thing. But they didn't pay attention to the evolution of the human being over the last million years, that we kids are in the dirt. They're putting dirty hands in their mouths, and that there's this constant exposure to the the soil-based organisms. In fact, research now shows they're very important. Not only are their first challenge was because they're spore form, that they would take over. That if you took a soil-based organism, it would destroy all your gut microbiome and take over. Not the way the body works.
Mm.
There's limiting factors, and also these species are transient. So they'll stay, they'll germinate, they'll do good things, they'll knock off some bad guys, they'll make some wonderful metabolic molecules,
Mm.
and they'll march on. If we look at foods like buffalo mozzarella from Italy, had soil-based organisms in it. The primary organism for the mozzarella is a bacteria, but bacillus was in there in the early days. And I'm just trying to think, your fermented vegetables
Mm-hmm.
will have soil-based organisms. So there's already a massive, overwhelming precedent that we need soil-based organisms. Um, and now we see that, well, I guess there's really three that are primary that every supplement company is comfortable selling. But right now, research would have us at around 10 that are really specifically beneficial to the body. And so we often want to be sure that we have our fermented vegetables, the sauerkraut, and so forth, and get our soil based. Eat a blackberry from the bush. We're out in the wilds of nature where it hadn't been sprayed with a pesticide, and that type of thing, and just be happy that we have this connection with the earth.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's, I hear Dr. Zach Bush talking about that a lot, and just opening up my mind to, we want to be wild and out in nature. We are part of it, and we're constantly getting, information and I don't know all the terminology, but just from the air, the soil, everything, that we're just being permeated all the time. So it's important to be out in nature and in the wild were built for this. I don't know how
Well,
to say
throughout human history, the big problems have been caused in the cities
it. Right.
when we herd together, and too many. And that seems to be an overriding factor today because the human being is also a pack animal, you might say, or a pack species. I don't want to offend anyone. They're an animal, but that we do go together in we out in nature. A tribe will form, that type of thing, that we look to each other, division of labor, and each to their skills, and we form community. But the Great Plagues of Europe were caused by population density. You say, oh no, it was caused by a flea on a rat, but the rat was so prevalent because of population density.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we build industrialized societies, we also see that there's more autoimmune diseases in people that don't have the connection with the barnyard and
Right.
nature. And so if we would just understand that, we might look at how we construct our urban environments
Mm-hmm.
to be a little different. That
Yeah.
maybe we wouldn't over sterilize so much, and we would focus on building immune integrity from within. And then we can have our hospitals and libraries and schools and theater and all the wonders of
Mm-hmm.
city life,
Yeah.
and not have to go overboard and court the Chicago fire or um, the pandemic diseases that can go rampant. We just have to get back and look at nature's model, and it would guide us.
And that really leads me to, I think it's like a really nice wraparound just to kind of package it all together. I was reading your book again, getting prepared, the Your Liver, Your Lifeline, which I've shown to folks who've been watching. And I was just taking from one of your quotes where you were talking about, how many people have livers that function so much lower, and that lifestyles and circumstances that are contrary to the natural laws of life, are often, one of the main contributors of not having a optimal, functioning system. And it got me thinking, like, how can we maneuver our modern lives to be more connected to the natural law? Like, how connected and disconnected are we? So, I'm hearing you say that again. It's important for us just in the thinking process.
It's a good meditation, and it would put us back into having it all.
Yeah, I
Part of
agree.
our natural health model is not to go back to digging in the dirt with our hands.
Right.
Um, and certainly, I'd much rather have a solar powered tractor, than a gasoline powered tractor. So we have to keep evolving and doing it. It's that when we estrange ourselves from natural law, that we start to suffer. And nature's very tolerant, and then we suddenly do it so much and so collectively throughout the entire torus of humanity, that now we have the debates of global warming, and we start looking at rising ocean levels, and uh, raging fires and torrential, and nature just gets a little bit rougher when it's being tampered with. Don't you love that old? You're too young. The TV commercial on a chiffon trans fat margarine was, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature, but the punchline of the commercial was, yeah, but we did.
Oh,
And we not only fooled her, but now and she's mad, but now she can go away because we've got something better. We have your margarine, of course, which was the trans fats that drive inflammation and probably ended up resulting in millions of deaths
right,
as people use their margarine product.
right.
But so anyway, those are the attitudes that are permeated, that nature's for us to trick. We need to market. We need to spin it around nature. But what a beautiful life could be. And I think, just to wrap up, I know we're running right at an hour. I wanted to bring out that we underestimate today the healing power of love in our lives. That if we can realize on being sick that we don't have to be irritable and strike out against something, that we can really use the time to connect ourselves with the wonders of life, and realize that maybe our adjustment time here of illness is really working for the greater good for us, and that there is a state of mind or a goodwill that we can cultivate within ourselves that really is a healing frequency. It's close to the healing frequency, and it facilitates the relaxing of inflammation. So that's a whole nother topic, or maybe a topic for other speakers for you to get into the bioenergetics. But I think it goes back in thinking that the only actions we can do that don't have some degree of negative connotation, you might think, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and sometimes do-gooders are out there causing big problems. But the one that you've got your free pass on is the goodwill or love, we call it sometimes, for all life. And then we respect our plants, and then we respect our animals, and we don't put them into CAFO, confined feeding operations, and we don't jam them full of antibiotics and feed them unnatural foods and pesticided foods and harvest them right before they go into cancer and things like that. We would not have those practices, and we would respect other people to have their differences and the validity of their life path, and then we wouldn't be having all of these conversations that occupy the news media, and the juggling and the balancing of act of going from a hatred on one side to a hatred on the other, and the whole gamut of human beings. We could just hit that sweet spot. And finally, no one put us here to have an easy time. Life is the testing ground, and this earth is a testing ground.
Right.
But we have such ability to claim our individual autonomy and make choices. In the old days, they called that right discrimination. Now that the word has changed a bit in its meaning, but we can make the right decisions for ourselves and our families, and live more in the healing and health emanations, which is simply a way of opening up a more full and varied life. So anyway, I'm finished. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. It's just been so informative, and of course has left me with more and more questions, but I feel so full, and thank you so much. Appreciate it. And anyone who's listening now or later, you're always welcome to reach out to me. And I have here just Jack's information. He's got his websites that you can go to and find him, and his blog, and also his tips. So here's just a few of those things.
Oh my goodness, you got more than I remember.
And there's very few and far between videos of you, Jack, but I found a few through the systemic formulas, and also something on his website through Vimeo where you can listen to, which I find really valuable information just around your filter.
People seem to find stuff on YouTube, or they'll cite something. I didn't even put it there. So
I've been looking, and whatever I find, I'm going to save, because, it's all such wonderful information. So let's see. We have one more comment. Joanna is sending both of us love. And
Thank
so
you.
much love back to you, Joanna. Thank you. Tip, stay on for a minute, and I'm just going to end it for now. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Ciao.